So in this video, I'm going to show how you can go about creating a 90-degree flange in sheet metal, but we're going to use a template to kind of help us with the design. So let's take a look. So in this video, I'm going to show how you could go about creating this 90-degree sheet metal elbow. This actually came up in a class I was teaching a while back on sheet metal, and they were asking what's the best way to create this. And so this is one method that I came up with. There's probably other ways you could do this. If you have other ideas, please feel free to share them in the comments of this video. So Fusion has this flange command that allows you to do lofted flanges. Unfortunately, it only allows you to do a loft between two profiles. So for example, this bottom circle to this angled circle. It doesn't allow us to do a loft like all the way along this. So what we're going to do is actually build almost like a template and then use that template to create the actual sheet metal components. And then what I'm going to show at the end is how you could go about creating a drawing of this to show what the actual individual pieces would look like. So let's dive right in. I'm going to start a new design. And like I mentioned, I want to create a kind of like a template of this. So I'm going to start by creating a new component, and I'll just call this pipe design assembly. Then I'll go ahead and create a 4-inch circle on the top plane, or the bottom plane in this case, like so. This is going to kind of define the diameter of the pipe, and now we want to define the path that it's going to follow. So I'm going to create a sketch on this front plane, and I'm going to use a cool command here under polygon. We have this edge polygon command. I'll start at 0, 0, and then I can start to define the edge of the polygon, and I want this to be 3 inches tall. So I'll go ahead and hit enter. And then now you can see it's asking for the number of sides. Well, in this case, I want 12 sides. And I'm going to zoom out so you can kind of see we now have a line that goes up, a line at an angle, another angle, and then horizontal. So we're going to go ahead and hit enter. And it just created this 12-sided polygon, and this first edge is 3 inches tall. Now we don't need all of this for the path, so I'm going to hit the trim command and basically just click and drag, and it's almost like I'm painting away. So I'm not having to click, I'm just dragging along, and it gets rid of all of those extra lines. Now, I could come in here and add more dimensions if I needed to fully constrain this, but all I really care about is this 3-inch distance right here. So I'm going to go ahead and finish the sketch. So we have our profile, and then we have the path that it's going to follow. So now I'm able to use the sweep command, pick my profile, pick my path, and you can see how using the sweep command, it basically builds the shape that we're trying to get to. Now, this is not sheet metal currently. This is just kind of our template that I was talking about. Now, the reason we're doing this is it's going to give us these profiles that you can see right here. And this is what we're going to use to loft the sheet metal profile to. Now, to get these profiles, we're going to have to create some sketches. And to create those sketches, we're going to have to create some construction planes. Now, the construction plane I like to use is plane through 3 points. Now, what's cool about this is there is actually a vertice right here. In fact, you can kind of, let me escape out. You can kind of see when I hover over, you can kind of see these are 2 separate lines. But here's the clue. There's only 2 vertices. There's one here, and then there's one back there on the back side of the line. So we actually need a 3rd vertice. So I'm going to build that really quick. Under construct, point along a path. And then I can just pick on this line right here. And I'm just going to pick randomly. And then you can see as I drag this point, there's like a start point, a midpoint, and an end point. And if I get near that midpoint, it kind of snaps to it. And you can see proportionally, it's halfway along that line. I'll say OK, and now we have 3 points. We have a start, a middle, and an end point. So I'm going to repeat that just by dragging straight up. I'll click on this line. I'm just going to drag until I get to that point. I'll say OK. And I'll just do that one more time on this edge, drag until it kind of snaps to that point. And we now have these extra points that will allow us to now say plane through 3 points. So I'll click on this point here, that point there, and then this point over here. And you can see how it created a point that's slicing right through those edges. So once again, I'm going to right click and drag straight up to repeat the last command. What's basically happening, if I right mouse click, you can see this like almost like blue radar type of thing. And if I move straight up, you can see it's repeating the last command, which is playing through 3 points. So when I'm dragging straight up, it's repeating the last command. If I were to drag to the right, it would say OK. If I were to drag to the left, it would be cancel. Okay, so I'll pick these 3 points here. So I'll pick that point there, and there. So for example, I could drag to the right and say OK. That's the shortcut key. Drag straight up, point, point, and point. I could come over here and hit OK, or just drag to the right to say OK. So I now have those 3 planes. So the next step is to create some sketches. So I'm going to pre-select this plane and say create sketch. Now I'm going to rotate isometrically so you can kind of see what's going on here. So this sketch is now slicing through those edges right there. And we want to use project, intersect. And I can pick on either this body or this body down here. And what it's going to do is it's going to project the intersection of that body onto our sketch. And I want to make sure that I actually have bodies selected instead of specified entities. I mean, I guess either one would work, but I'm going to go ahead and select body. And so we can do that, say OK, and you can see how it's projecting where the body is intersecting that plane. We'll finish our sketch, create a sketch on that plane. Again, I'll rotate just so you can kind of see what's going on here. Project, intersect, body. I'll click on that, and it's going to project where that body is intersecting that plane. Now, I went ahead and put a plane up here. What we're going to end up doing, because this is symmetric, we're only going to have to do these 2 pieces, and then we can mirror along this edge right here to basically get these 2 pieces. But I'll go ahead and continue on just so you can kind of see how this works. I'll do this one more time. I'll say project, intersect, and finish our sketch. So now we have the geometry, the construction geometry that we need. So the next step is to now start with the sheet metal. So I'm going to right mouse click on our pipe design and say new component. And I'm going to change it from a standard component to a sheet metal component. I'll go ahead and give it a name. Let's call this section 1. And I can also give it a sheet metal rule. And in this case, I'm going to just pick steel inch and say OK. And you'll notice that it expanded open my assembly, and I now have a sheet metal component underneath this assembly. I'll go ahead and turn off the bodies because we don't need those anymore. I'm going to expand open my sketches, and let's turn on that first sketch. And we're going to use that for our sheet metal. I can now create a flange. And I want to make sure that my flange is set to Lofted Flange, and it's asking for the profiles. So I'm going to select that profile, and you can see how it's using the sheet metal rule. and it's lofting between those two profiles. Now it's putting the material on the outside. I'm going to change that to put it onto the inside, like so. And we'll say OK, and we now have our first section. Now, this is a solid flange. We can't open this up or lay it out flat. We need to create some kind of an opening or a rip. And I want to put the rip on the inside, so I need to create some points for that. Let me show you what I mean by that. So if I come in here under Modify, you can see this command called rip, and it's asking for a face, edge, or vertex. So if I hover over this, you'll notice there's this red dot or whatever, and you can kind of see it snap to this point right there. I'm going to go ahead and click there, and then same thing here. You can see like there's this green dot right here. Well, I'm not 100% sure that I snapped exactly where I wanted that to be. So I want to mathematically make sure that I'm correct. So I'm going to create some geometry. And the reason for that is like this point could be off a little bit. I'm over exaggerating, but you can kind of see how that is not straight up and down. So I want to make sure that I have an exact point that I can snap to. So I'm going to use that point along a path again. So I'll just pick on this edge here, start to drag, and we can see that white point, and you can see how it snaps to that white point right there at 0. I'll go ahead and say OK, and it's going to create a point right there. Now when I come in here and say rip, I can click on, you can kind of see it snap to that point right there. And then same thing down here, it turns green, it's snapping to that point. And now I feel more confident that I've clicked exactly at that point. I'll go ahead and say OK, and we've ripped this seam right here. Let me go ahead and edit this really quick. I forgot to mention, it remembered my last gap width, which was 0.05. So you can change whatever you want in there. So if that was like 0.1, you can see that's 0.1. But I think 0.05 looks good for this case. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK. Now, if I come in here and say create flat pattern, what's my stationary face? I'll just click on one of these internal faces and say OK. It's going to lay this out and unfold that basically and show you what that would look like laid flat. So I'll go ahead and finish that flat pattern. And so we basically created one segment. So now we're just going to do this next segment. So I'll right click on my pipe design assembly and create another sheet metal component. So I'll say new component, make sure it's sheet metal. I'll call this section 2. Keep it the same sheet metal rule, say OK. And then use the flange, lofted flange. Let's go ahead and turn that guy off, and let's turn on our sketches that we need. And so we need to loft between this profile and this profile, and you can see exactly how it does that. Make sure the sides are the same, so I might turn on my section 1, so sure enough we can see I need to change the side so that looks the same. There we go. And we'll say OK. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing for creating that rip. So let me turn off this guy. I'll do the point along a path, drag until it kind of snaps there, say OK. And I'll do the same thing on the bottom here just in case. Drag to that point there. Then I'll use those points for the rip. So you can kind of see it snap there. I'll say OK. Let's turn on our section. We can see that those line up perfectly. I'll go ahead and activate the top level here. And like I mentioned before, if we want to continue this on, I could keep lofting, but we could also use the mirror command. So I'm going to come in here and say mirror, make sure it's set to components, and let's just mirror those two sections. And then what's our mirror plane? Let's turn on our construction plane, which is this one here. And let's just mirror along that construction plane, and you can see the result that we're going to get, and we now have all of the pieces that we need. Section 1, 2, and then section 1 mirror and section 2 mirror. I'll go ahead and turn off our construction. We don't need those anymore. I can even turn off our sketches. We don't need those anymore. We now have our finished sheet metal components. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and I'll just call this pipe example. And I want to make sure that I have flat patterns for each of these segments. So if I expand open section 1, I can see I have a flat pattern there. If I expand open section 2, I can see that I do not have a flat pattern. So I'll go ahead and activate section 2 and create a flat pattern. It's asking for a stationary face. I can see that this other part's in the way. I could either turn it off, or I could click and hold for about a second, and it'll allow me to probe through until I get the face that I want, which is this third face. I'll select that, say OK, and I get this really cool flat pattern. I'll finish that. So now section 2 has a flat pattern. Let's expand open the mirror. You'll notice it doesn't have a flat pattern. So I'll activate that guy, create a flat pattern of that, finish, and then do the last one here. Activate, create a flat pattern, probe through until I get the right face that I want, and then finish the flat pattern. Okay, so now all of these have a flat pattern attached to them. I'll go ahead and activate that top level just so everything's shaded and active. We'll save this guy. Now I want to create a drawing that includes all of the flat patterns on one sheet. And this can be somewhat tricky, and I've done a video on this in the past. So I'm going to just refresh everybody on how to do this. It's actually kind of cool. I'm going to activate one of my flat patterns. So section 1, I'm going to activate this flat pattern, and then I'm going to say new drawing from design. We'll do a manual drawing from scratch. We're going to create a new drawing from scratch. I'll say it's ASME inch, and I'll say it's a C-size drawing in this case. So it's going to create a new, like a title block, a C-size title block, and it will place this flat pattern on that C-size drawing. So you'll see it's going to come up here in just a second. Here's that pattern. Let's do maybe 1 to 2, and I'll just place it right here for now. What I'm going to do now is save this drawing. And so you can see it's going to be called Pipe Example Drawing, and I'll just go ahead and save this. We'll jump back to our 3D model, finish our flat pattern, and now we'll go into the next flat pattern. So we just did section 1. Now I'm going to go into section 2 and activate section 2, and I'm going to do the exact same thing with a slight difference. So I'm going to go into drawing from design, but instead of creating a new drawing, you click this little down arrow and you're going to see your pipe example drawing here. So I'm going to select that. And now instead of creating a whole new drawing, it's going to put this into our existing pipe example drawing. And you'll notice it's going to allow us to put it onto a new sheet, or to put it onto sheet 1, which is what we currently have. And that's why we saved the drawing, is so we could see it in this dialog. And I'm going to say, let's put it on sheet 1. You'll notice we can't change any of the standards or the sheet size or anything like that. And when I say OK, it now brings this flat pattern onto our existing drawing, onto sheet 1. I'll go ahead and say 1 to 2, and we'll just place this like that. And I'll just do that again for the other 2 flat patterns. So for the mirrors, so I'll come down here, I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Here's this flat pattern. Basically rinse and repeat from design, pipe example drawing, sheet 1, okay. I'll place that up here. We could have said, quantity of 2 since these are going to be the same, but we'll just go with this, and then we'll activate this last one. Drawing from design. So now we have our flat pattern layout. I can even come in here and do a base view. Let's do like a 1 to 2 and maybe like northeast isometric shaded to kind of show like what the finished product would look like, for example. And you can move these views around, add dimensions, etc. But that's the idea of bringing your flat patterns all onto the same sheet, and also how to go about creating the 90-degree pipe using kind of like a template to allow us to use the lofted flange. I hope you learned something new and enjoyed that video. If you did, make sure you like and subscribe to be notified of upcoming videos. If you need help learning Fusion, visit my webpage at cadedllc.com. And as always, have fun learning Fusion.